Welcome in, guys. I'm here with Sarah Spencer of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Sarah is a longtime friend. We both went to UGA together. She's been covering the Atlanta Hawks for the last couple of years, but now we were very lucky and excited to have her covering Georgia football.
Honor. So sweet.
And so I wanted to get her opinion on, things we've seen so far from fall practice, as we are at the halfway point, because she brings sort of a fresh perspective of not having been around the team for years and years and knowing the ins and outs and so much. And sometimes I think that's an advantage. You cover things with a more clear eye. And so, Sarah, I ask you here on DawgNation, who has impressed you so far this fall camp?
What stands out to me is probably Jalen Carter, and I think a lot of that is because he's got gigantic shoes to fill. Not that he didn't get a lot of experience last year. I think he's one of those guys on the defense where, yes, the defense only returns 3 starters from last year, but there's also a lot of guys that played a ton of snaps. So it's not like an entirely new group. It can sometimes be a little bit misleading. Kirby Smart spoke about how Jalen Carter has showed a lot of maturity. His practice habits are impressing him in fall camp. I almost said spring camp too. What year is it? What month is it? I don't know. So he's probably someone who stood out to me so far. Jamin Dumas-Johnson. I don't know. And I think that's what you want to see. You want to see some guys on the defense stepping up because the offense, I think, has significantly less questions around it, considering who they bring back.
Yeah, and I think it's good that, because Kirby Smart has talked about the lack of leadership on defense, not so much just because there aren't guys there.
But in that first scrimmage, he talked about that.
That was his big concern there. And so it's good to hear that, Jamin Dumas-Johnson, Jalen Carter, I think Chris Smith, you can include Keely Ringo in there as well. Those guys are going to be Georgia's best players this year. And I do think the better football teams out there tend to have their leaders are also their best players. It was certainly the case last year with Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis on the defensive side
Nolan
of the ball.
Smith, at media days, like having a guy who's not afraid to go out there and be a vocal leader. You have to be comfortable being the face of the program. Right. And last year with the defense had 5 guys who went in the first round. So, you really can't have bigger shoes to fill than that. But they've got guys who are doing it, who are stepping right up.
Right, and, Kirby Smart is still a defensive first coach. I think he always ideally, he would want his defense to be the lead. He would want his defense to be the guys out there making the plays, making the impressions. Now, we've touched a little bit on the positive. What are your areas of concern right now with this team as we are a little over 2 weeks away from the season opener against Oregon on September 3rd?
Well, as much as we can talk about the positives individually on defense, I think that unit being cohesive, that is a question. Some of that being, I think it was Will Muschamp who spoke about every time they put defensive guys out there on the practice field, they mix them up.
Yep.
It's different combinations of guys because you don't want just one position group to get comfortable with each other. And I think with so many, not new guys again, but new to the limelight, stepping into bigger roles, you want to make sure they're all communicating, everything's cohesive. That would honestly be one of my biggest things is can you perform well as a unit? I don't mean to compare again to last year. That's going to get really old. But when you win the national title, maybe it's not bad to compare to last year. Yeah. I think that's going to be because that unit was so practiced together. And then also Kirby Smart, after that first scrimmage, you can't say that went well from a defensive perspective. When he said, what did he say? He said, I've learned to not read too much into it when your first scrimmage ain't pretty. And it wasn't pretty.
No, and I think the big
from a tackling perspective.
And that's also Saturday was probably the first time they were really full go tackling.
Yeah.
And they were out there in full pads today again. And they're going to do it again this coming Saturday with another huge scrimmage. But just with the changes in football and them trying to make it safer, you're just not tackling to the ground as much as you used to.
And it's not their fault. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But it does mean that it's very close to the season that you're going full tilt. Again, that's probably good just for the sake of injury and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't mean you're just now kind of revealing a lot of things when you put on full pads.
Right.
He mentioned the lack of energy and enthusiasm. If I was a defensive coach, I would not want to hear lack of energy and enthusiasm.
It's not something you can fix and can adjust. It's not replacing.
It's not X's and O's.
Yeah, exactly.
It's personality.
Yeah, it's the institutional knowledge that guys like Nakobe Dean, Traven Walker, Lewis Seen, Jordan Davis, those guys had played together for 2, 3, 4 years in some. They
just kind of moved as one.
Exactly, and so they don't have that with this team. It's a lot of sure you have your Nolan Smith as your senior edge rusher, you have Jalen Carter as your junior defensive tackle, you have Keely Ringo as there. Jamin Dumas-Johnson, who we touched on earlier, we're going to hear from later tonight. This is his first time as a real starter, and this is a guy who didn't start last year, obviously playing behind 3 NFL linebackers. Didn't play high school football his senior year at St. Francis Academy up there in Maryland because Maryland did not have high school football. So really, you have to go all the way back to 2019 when he last was a starter playing those types of reps. And that's just not something that you easily replace and lock into there. And so I think, him and how he grows, I think is going to be really say a lot about this Georgia defense. We're early on in the year. There might be some questions about it, but
there's no questions about talent.
No,
exactly. It's just about like how do they handle such a bigger workload? How do you handle you're the unquestioned starter?
You're calling the defense for the
You're calling the defense.
Yeah.
So you can't be scared of opening up your mouth, really kind of being that. Providing some leadership, and I think we're gonna see that. I don't think it's that I'm saying that's not the case. It's just you don't see it until you start scrimmaging. You don't see it until you go out there and play Oregon.
Right, and I think one of the things about this Georgia team and this program now really is, as much as we put an emphasis on that first game against Oregon, this is a game 13, game 14 program, not necessarily so much a game 1 program. So they're doing things to make sure right now, yes, we have our ducks in a row when they play Oregon on September 3rd.
Ducks in a row.
I didn't even mean to do that. But I think come the end of the year, this is going to be a defense that they want to have in position to where they're playing as close to the level that they were playing in the national championship game last year.
It's true. Even the way that I feel like you and me, or the way people cover the team, fans, the way we view the defense, we're talking so much about the defense because that's how high the bar is. The standard is so high. It's been set so high. The number 1 scoring defense in the country by a bit last year. So it's almost I feel like maybe in a way, if it were a different team, we'd be splitting hairs. But the bar is way up here. So.
And I do think that sort of speaks to where we all sort of feel about this offense. In a way, I think people are talking about this offense in a way they were talking about that defense a year ago. Now we'll see, if Georgia goes out and scores 50 points a game, I think we'll be fairly surprised by that. But I think this offense can be that sort of impactful and sort of lead the way, at least early on in the season, until I think this team becomes a complete team. So
much experience coming back on offense. I think it would be a little bit hard for the offense to not kind of be a continuation of what it was last year. Especially when I know Stetson Bennett, there's, I don't know, some people think he's underestimated, some people might think he's I don't know. But he brings a lot of experience. I mean, you can't deny what he did, so the resume of the offense speaks for itself.
Yeah, and so shifting gears here a little bit, second scrimmage on Saturday. I think the last real big scrimmage of the fall. After that, they will start to move into beginning to prep for Oregon. You will be there on Saturday. What are you looking for in that scrimmage? And what do you what will you as a reporter be like, oh, wow, Georgia feels pretty good about itself if they're saying this after the scrimmage?
Honestly, I think what would impress me most, which is what this is all about, would probably be how vocal it is. I feel like whenever having covered the NBA, very different field, I know, court. But one thing that is really common in basketball that they'll say is a quiet gym is a bad gym. And I think it's similar on a football field. If it's really quiet, not that it is very often, stuff is going really wrong if it's quiet. So I think I'm looking for how outspoken are these guys? How much is there, yelling, not in a negative way, but hey, do this, hey, do that. How comfortable are you kind of, that's one of the things Kirby Smart said, if something goes wrong, can you check someone?
Yeah.
Can you say this is what you're supposed to do, actually you did this, you're supposed to do that. So I'm looking for, honestly, just how comfortable these guys are, yelling at each other, talking to each other, that kind of thing. There's X's and O's stuff too, of course, to be evaluated. But in terms of the defense and just I think that's probably the biggest thing, because that's the biggest thing. That was the biggest sticking point from the first scrimmage.
Well, and the image that sort of sticks in my mind is from the national championship last year, where Channing Tindall had a bust. And Nakobe Dean in the middle of the game rails into him, and it's hey, you got to be better here. And
that's what you need.
And that's what you need. And then the very next play, Channing Tindall comes out and gets a sack and forces an Alabama field goal there. That's the thing they need, and they don't just need it.
Accountability.
Correct. Where you have much better words than I do.
That's what I just talked for 3 minutes. The word is accountability.
Nolan Smith is obviously a vocal guy. He has no problem doing that. But you can't have Nolan Smith be that guy all the time. You need
He's gonna get hoarse. All of the coaches have already been so hoarse. It was day 2 of camp, and I feel like Glenn Schumann was hi. And Todd Monken's hello. They're all losing their mind. It has to come from everybody.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of the beast right now at this time of year. It's a lot of on-hand coaching. It's a lot of focusing on self-improvement more so than focusing on just Oregon. But that date will be here before we know it. We'll be talking about Georgia football. Sarah, it's been so great having you on. I'm so glad we got to do this. Thank you. You were wonderful as I expected.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.